Okay. Because you and I have been talking a little bit about like the markets and stuff, trying to monitor and see like where things could go.
Yes.
Uh, You really think this could go?
It could.
A while?
It could go into. I mean, we've had depressions before. This is not going to be the Great Depression. Well,
here's what we could call it: the Great Depression of the 21st century.
Possibly. Hopefully, we've learned the lessons of the past and we don't fuck this up. But in terms of a depression, yes, of course, it's very possible. Given one, the mass unemployment. Secondly, the economy is off, right? Like, y'all took a 30% shit storm when China went under. That's China. With China. That's even before this shit hit Europe and got to the level that it's at now. Far less for when it hit the US, where you guys are at now. So the market they don't know what to think about this situation. And the problem is, like, I got somebody on my Facebook messaged me today asking me if my opinion on the market has changed. And I'm like, bro, it's been a fucking week. Like, nothing has changed. We still have all of those same problems that we had before.
I was like asking you if I should make some moves financially, and you were saying no, not yet, because there was like a slight jump in the market.
The Fed is printing money like nobody's business. Now, for you, maybe, if you get a good bounce, you could probably sell out. When it goes lower, you'll have more money to reallocate, possibly. So you don't mind if it goes up because that actually helps you regardless. But now is not the time, because I'll put it to you this way: Twitter. Twitter, right? They're no longer posting any financial information for the rest of the year. They're not putting out quarterly reports. They're supposed to put out a report every 3 months. And they do guidance, and they put out EPS estimates, which is like earnings per share, and all that stuff. There's like, no, we're going to stop reporting because we have no fucking clue what the hell is going on.
Yeah, something about, what was it? The Dow was at 28,000 a month ago.
Yeah, almost 29. Yeah.
What is it at now?
I think it's at 21.
Yeah, it was at 18.
It went all the way down to 18, and then the Fed started printing money. But they are going to
there's definitely
a fuck ton, and they can't keep that up forever.
Well, this is so. Yeah, I mean, I was telling you, some people are asking. Some people I know were like concerned, like, oh, he's going to print a lot of money. I'm like, well, here's my view. Governments print money all the time, but
yeah, let me hear the end of
that. Some do it to the point that hyperinflation happens. Some do it in a way where inflation increases, but not to the point where they're like, they don't do it that carelessly. At least I would hope not.
Right. The quantity of money that's being printed by the US is definitely in the range of hyperinflation. It is far and away above what most countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela and stuff like that did with their currency. It is insane.
You think they would print the money into worthlessness?
They are printing the money into worthlessness. It's not will they are. They're print the capacity of money that they're putting out is far and away above what anybody else.
How are we not seeing this play out just yet, though?
That's because it's only just begun. Again, these are things that take a while to creep into the system, which is why nobody is really understanding what's going on. Right? You don't print a bunch of money and then expect, the market is going to crash and prices
wouldn't the U.S. of all places, though? Wouldn't the U.S. of all places understand that as dumb to do?
Hello. Why would the US think anything like that? It's a bunch of fucking politicians. They don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, I'll put it to you this way. The last time y'all had a financial crisis back in 2008, quantitative easing was put into effect, which was the same thing, printing money. Are things cheaper or more expensive than they were back in 2008?
Obviously more expensive.
Obviously more expensive. that is the point. The inflation came in. Now, the government only looks at something called CPI inflation. But for everything else in your life, your food, your water, your electricity, everything else, you saw the effects of the money printing, right? Now, you didn't see it in the CPI numbers because that stayed relatively low. And that's the metric that the Fed is going off of. If the CPI is going up, okay, we've reached core inflation, and they will adjust the interest rates accordingly. But in everyday life, in like the main street life, prices doubled in the space of 8 years. Now they're doing 10 times that in the space of 1 year. What do you think is going to happen to the currency? Now, I'm not saying that will happen, but it is a very, very real possibility that it could happen.
God damn it.
Yeah, it is fucked up. It is like I have physical gold and silver that I have in a secured location. And I have a friend in New York, and he's like, "Oh, I'll buy it from you." And I'm like, "No fucking way. You do not know what's coming." Yeah, I'm going to hold on to that. And one day that might buy me a Learjet.
You think there's actually like real possibility of like some sort of a full-blown collapse?
There's always the possibility of collapse. The problem becomes, here's what, again, nobody is discussing these things. The $6 trillion that the Fed is printing, right? It's $6 trillion, right? Your entire economy is $12 trillion. You've basically gone up by 50% of the available money. There is interest to be paid on said printed money. Now, granted, it's low because the Fed has dropped the rate to like 0.1. You're already paying 25% of your GDP goes to pay debt, right? And that's when your debt was 21, 22 trillion. They've just bumped that up to 27, 28 trillion. Yes, interest rates are low, but guess what happens if that goes up by just a little bit? That 25% of your GDP goes to 40% of your GDP. And that's not even counting all the non-discretionary spending, right? Which is your Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, which makes up like 70% of your budget. You guys are out of money, right? You're going to pay all your money in interest and have nothing left. And then you end up like a country called Japan.
But I got my Trump bucks, though.
You got your Trump bucks. Spend it while you can, bro. Like, again, this same guy that messaged me this morning, I was trying to explain to him these very same points. Honestly, we don't know. I could be completely wrong, but the only model we can go off of is Japan, because Japan is on quantitative easing 20-something plus. I don't even fucking know how often they've done this. But the problem is, as you know, tax revenue comes in, there's a pool of money, and then there's, spending, and whatever's, still needs to be spent, there is, you get debt, right? You borrow money from wherever, and of course you have to pay the interest on that. The problem in Japan is that their interest payment alone, is more than their GDP. All of it is gone in the space of, so they can't even pay the full amount of interest. They need to borrow money to pay the interest on the money they've already borrowed before they borrow money to put into the economy to do all their spending. That's the debt crisis that Japan is in right now. And it's Japanese bonds are the most toxic things on the planet. But you guys are on track to do a very similar thing. If the interest rate starts going up, your budget is gone. Like, there is no way you can maintain the levels of spending if the interest rate decides to go up.
So how do you solve Japan's problem?
There is no way to solve. It's going to bust. There's no way out, because they've done this so much. Let me rephrase that. The only way you could do it is probably to abolish the central bank, and you get rid of the interest payments. That's probably the only way to do it. Yeah. So if in order to avoid that, you would need to get rid of the central bank. And that would send so many repercussions throughout the financial market. It would be pretty ridiculous.
So what you're saying is we need
You
a
got to end the Fed.
I mean, wasn't there some talking about ending the Fed here in the States? Like the Fed is being absorbed into some other organization?
It can't be, because the Fed is actually not a government entity. It's a private corporation. So technically speaking, you can't. The federal government really has no say over the Federal Reserve. It says Federal Reserve, but it's not actually a federal institution. So they can't. They're allowed to appoint a governor. Usually, somebody that they kind of palm into your hand, like this is the guy we want. So they can't do anything. That is the only way to get around the interest problem of what's coming, would be to abolish the Fed. It could get very scary. I hope it doesn't, because, I kind of like money.
You and me both.
Yeah, I kind of like being able to afford things, and, I kind of, I'm comfortable. If it goes the way that it could go, things would get a lot more difficult for a lot of people very quickly. And that's scary. Yeah.
Still want to move here, Brooke?
I did.
Because at first our whole complaint was, the UK's got all their craziness, their speech laws, and you're like, I'm thinking about the US, and now the US has this.
No, it's like what I'm looking at the financials in the US, I think you guys are still a lot better than we are in the social respects. So freedom of speech, self-protection, Second Amendment, stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. But what Trump is doing and the Fed and everything else, and I get it. I understand why he's doing it, because he wants the stock market to be up so he can win the re-election. So he's basically said, take the brakes off and just get the fucking thing back up to whatever, 28,000. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think you could damn near bankrupt the government trying to do that, given the downward pressure that's coming. And that's my concern. The solution could be worse than the disease, but we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I completely hope I'm wrong.
Oh boy.
Yeah.